today's agenda is going to cover Apple's, Microsoft's, and Google's announcements around AI. And in an hour, we're not going to get around to everything, but we're going to get around to what I pulled out of it and what I think are some significant changes in technology that are coming along. And a lot of it has to do with AI that's coming to our devices. Devices meaning computers, phones, tablets, technology that we use, okay? And a lot of it also has to do with something called a neural processing unit. And I'm going to kind of give people a little basic understanding, I hope, of neural processing units and a new performance metric that is something that will help you understand how well your device can do with AI as they're starting to come out with AI on devices. Okay. So Apple, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, almost every company that makes a technology product usually has a developer conference. The developer conference is for the people that develop applications that run on these companies' platforms. Okay, so Apple gets their software developers into Apple and people that develop apps, and they show them what they're working on, what the early versions of the operating system will look like. Microsoft does it. Google does it. Okay, so these companies rely a lot on third parties that develop applications that work on their platforms. It can work with Android, it can work with Windows, it can work on the web, and they basically show their developers over a week-long conference all the features that they're building into their technology so that developers can start building their apps for public release when they're released to the public, usually in the October, November, December timeframe when a lot of new products come out. So these are very important conferences. The technology financial analysts watch these conferences to get early ideas of what they might see coming out in products, because in order for a software developer developing an app on an iPhone or an Android or Windows or on the web, they kind of have to know what's going on behind the scenes. And so it's really, really important. And they're very important conferences. They all tell you a roadmap for their products, where they're going with Windows, where they're going with iOS, where they're going with Google, Android. They all tell you these things, and they introduce these features in the next OS and make it really easy for software developers to develop apps, because if you don't get software developers making apps for your technologies, you will lose business to other people that they go to, because somebody will say, well, I want this great app and it only works on Windows, so I'll go with Windows. Or I want this great app and it only works on iOS, so I'll go with an iPhone. Or I want this great app and it only works on Android, so I'll go with Android. So that's why they really, really make it very, very friendly and cater to software developers a lot. Okay, so Microsoft announced a lot of things. They announced not only things around AI, but they also announced a lot of things. They introduced this Copilot Plus PCs, okay? So there are new PCs coming out. We'll talk a little bit more about what they do and how they work, and I've got a video that I'll show you from the Microsoft conference. There's some short videos I've got here that are 2 to 4 minutes long, because it's easier for you to hear it from the company directly. They update a lot of their apps. I mean, Microsoft makes a lot of commercial apps. They make Office apps. They make graphics apps. They make video editing apps. So they're a big app developer as well. So they've introduced new versions and new capabilities of their own apps. And then they've introduced for developers who want to develop them the ability to do custom copilots on Microsoft's web services for corporate clients, because Microsoft gets a lot of business from corporate clients. Now, they announced hundreds of features and hundreds of capabilities, but these are just a quick summary of what they did. For consumers like us, Copilot PC is probably one of the more significant things that are important to look at and understand. And so when we look at Copilot PCs, they are designed for artificial intelligence. And so they're going to work and run AI on the PC. There are new chips coming out from companies that make chips. There are a requirement for something we're going to talk about a little bit later called a trillion operations per second, or nicknamed TOPS. And I'm going to explain that later because that's a requirement for any chip to run Copilot PC. And then it'll have access to advanced AI models. Okay, Microsoft is doing a lot of things with OpenAI. They have an investment in it, but they're also doing things with Copilot. And one of the things that gives Microsoft a heavy investment in AI is they are the data center partner for OpenAI ChatGPT. So all of ChatGPT's applications and solutions are running on Microsoft, and Microsoft has, not to be left out, Google has a conference, they call it Google I/O. They introduced new capabilities with Gemini. They introduced a lot of AI cloud services. One of the things Google, like Microsoft, is offering cloud services to corporations and other application solution providers. And they have something they call Project Astra, that they are re-engineering what they call a personal assistant. Apple introduced a lot of things. Some of you may have watched their Worldwide Developer Conference where they introduced Apple Intelligence. They talked about on-device data and emphasized privacy a lot. They talked about what they're doing to enhance Siri with AI and bringing AI into apps like Safari and Mail and other tools like that. And they've got an integration with ChatGPT that will go out to the internet. If you can't do anything on your device, it'll actually go out and deal with it using ChatGPT. There's a lot of commonality that Apple and Windows, Microsoft, and Google have all started to introduce in terms of AI. And I created a little checkbox of all the different capabilities from their announcements, and they're surprisingly similar in many of the things they're doing. They all will have AI on the device with a neural processing unit. They all are focused on AI security and privacy. They all have image generation tools. They all have text generation tools. They all have an on-device search that can go back in your history. They're enhancing their AI in their own apps. They've got AI search capability, chat functions, and data and file analysis. And so there's not a real problem with going with any one. It's more a matter of if you've already got an investment in understanding a certain type of technology, you're going to find that there's going to be AI tools that are fairly comparable, but they might be a little bit different from one device or one company to another. The differences between Microsoft, Google, and Apple tend to be around the fact that Microsoft and Google have their own large language models that are out, but Apple is starting to release their own language models. There's a software developer website that Apple yesterday or the day before just released about 20 language and AI and machine learning, but they haven't really been as advanced as Google with Gemini or Microsoft with OpenAI and ChatGPT, but they've got a lot of capabilities, and there's a lot of open source capabilities that are out there that are being utilized as well. So I think that they'll catch up. And if you look at Apple, they don't do their own search on the web. They've used Google Search. So they've made it work for people without even having their own search engine. I think they'll do a very good job making AI work but a lot of these releases are coming out over the next year. So what does this thing mean on-device AI? That means our Copilot Plus PC is going to run on a PC that's capable of running AI. Gemini Nano is going to run on Android phones that are capable of running AI. That's their small version. They're making smaller versions of these large language models that can run on the device. And Apple will have Apple Intelligence on their devices as well. Sometimes these things may go to a cloud. Apple focused on having a private cloud that they will go to if they need to use cloud functionality. But right now with ChatGPT and Gemini and others, when you use it on the web or through an app, you're actually going out to the internet to their performance. Now, in order to do this AI on a device, there's a new performance metric called TOPS. It stands for tera or trillion operations per second. Now, we think of CPUs operating in the megahertz range, millions of operations per second. These are trillions of operations per second because you need really powerful capability to run AI, even a small one. They might get more efficient over time, but there are some hardware requirements in order to run AI on a device. Okay, there's a type of processor built into system chips that run AI called neural processing units. They're kind of like a nerve cell in a brain where they take a variety of inputs and they produce an output. And it's considered a unit that is a type of processor specifically focused on running what's called a neural network. And so it isn't just a simple addition or subtraction or multiplication. It's multiple sets of operations at the same time. And that's why the measurement is not adds or subtracts, it's operations, because that's what a neural processing chip does. Now, we've all got devices that have a single chip that actually already has many, many components to it. At first, we had a single chip that had a central processing unit or CPU. But then companies started shrinking down size and they were able to get a graphics processing unit built onto the same chip, which allowed the chip to perform faster, to put things on our displays, to enable our phones to play videos and other types of things. And so they put, instead of this being a separate circuit, it's actually just a part of the chip now. And then they started introducing, several years ago, a neural processing unit to run on the chip as well. Even though there wasn't full AI, like large language models, there was a lot of machine learning functionality in applications. Like if you use an iPhone or an Android phone, for example, to automatically enhance a picture, it'll use a combination of the CPU, the GPU, and the NPU to accomplish that task. But with this AI capability coming to our devices, it's important to have chips that have lots of CPUs, lots of GPUs, and lots of NPUs, because they can put multiple units, multiple single processing units on a single chip. And that means that they can expand the capabilities of that chip. Now, the NPU is what's used for local AI primarily. There might be some other functions on the chip, but the capability and the processing power of the NPU is what's most important to get this AI functionality that was announced on our devices. Okay, and so it's going to really be important to have a device that has the capability with enough neural processing units capability to be able to process trillions of operations per second. And Microsoft and Apple and Google have all put out information about what devices will run these new AI tools that they've got available. So in order to run Copilot PC, Microsoft's put out a real defined specification. That PC chip has to run 40 trillion operations per second, 40 tops, okay? And Gemini Nano has announced a supported devices list from Google, and Apple Intelligence has indicated they will have certain devices supported. Interestingly enough, if you look behind the specs, they're all going to have to run about close to 40 trillion operations per second on the device. So it's a good way to understand. Now with these chips, Macs and iPads will run Apple Intelligence with Apple's Silicon M1 and up. For the iPhone, the current model i15 Pro and 15 Pro Max will run Apple Intelligence. Prior models will not. With Windows, there is a Qualcomm Snapdragon X chip that is now available for shipment pretty quickly and within 30 days or sooner. And Android will run Google Nano on a Pixel 8 Pro, and Samsung has an AI chip with their S24. So those are the processing tools that are required to be able to work it. So if you've got a Mac or an iPad with an M1 chip, they all have neural processing units in them. The iPhone, I'll give you an example of when we look at an iPhone chip, we'll take a look at that chip. And Windows, they all have enough neural processing unit capability to run this on-device AI, but older technology will not run it. So we'll talk a little bit about upgrading. So here's why Apple can do it on an iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. It uses Apple's A17 Apple chip. It's got 16 cores. That means there are 16 separate neural processing units there, and it can do 35 trillion operations per second. Pretty close to Microsoft's specification of 40 million. Okay, so that's the capability range you're going to need to have the ability to run AI on a device. And it's 2 times faster than the previous chip generation that was in the iPhone 14 and in other models that are not the 15 Pro and Pro Max. So the question then is about upgrading. And after we talk about upgrading, we'll be able to talk about questions and go back to some of the material. If I was going to give a friend advice, what I would say is it going to make it easier to use? Is it going to get things done faster for you that you want to get done? And is it going to help you do new things you might have never done before? And if it is, then it's worth it to upgrade. But your technology is a tool that's going to do things for you, whether you use AI or not. And you can always go to the web and use AI. It's just that these tools are going to make things a lot different in terms of the capabilities you can get out of your devices that you might not have been able to ever do before.